Hello, this is Dr. Young, and I'm going to talk about week 7, reusable learning for continuously growing value. I'm going to talk about elements of a lean strategy and how, there's a lot of learning that you're going to use over and over again once you get the fundamentals of lean down. Maybe your first couple of projects, when you start to see a difference in your organization as you've completed these projects. Elements of a lean strategy include increased perceived quality to drive sales, intensity of Kaizen efforts to reduce costs, new product introduction as a critical critical to sustainable growth. So, as you convert your lines to new products, cut costs, cut space, and begin to have the ability to fill that with new product lines, you're going to see more growth. Reduce lead times to increase profit. So all of these are important elements of a lean strategy, and they make sense given what we've talked about so far in the class. So once you get started and you've got a kind of established the beginnings of a lean transformation, then you'll see exponential benefits as you continue to implement the same processes over and over and over and over again. So lean strategy is learning capability. You got to learn by doing in lean. And this teaches us how to learn. Solve immediate issues and delve into the deeper problems discovered. Sometimes when you solve one problem, you find another and another and another. So you continuously find and uncover issues that you may not have seen before. Build a lean learning system to improve workflow. So you got 4 basic strategies there. So you want to increase sales by reducing defects through building in quality. When you're building it, don't look for quality issues later and fix them. You want to build it in the beginning. Reduce the cost base by accelerating the rhythm of Kaizen and training people to solve problems. So when you train people to solve problems, they're always looking for issues. Therefore, they're constantly making changes and, solving problems. And when you do that, you continuously solve problems. You're going to cut costs each time, usually. Time is money. Even if you're cutting time, you're still saving money, cutting costs. Make space for new products by freeing up capacity, which we talked about, and reduce lead times to increase inventory turns. Oops, that should say turns. I know I've got some typos in these, and I'm going to fix them by the time that you start class. Conduct repeated experiments to lean. Conduct repeated experiments to learn about technical processes. Jeez. Learn. Okay, increases competitive edge. Competitive edge will build as technical problems are solved, especially if you do it better than your competition does. Teams can develop solutions as they go. Teams are given the autonomy to look for solutions and develop them, and all of that gives a competitive, advantage. If you're doing all of that and your competitor is going the traditional method, obviously you're going to be more agile than they are. and you're going to cut your cost. You're going to, what they do and what you do. What you do will cost you less than it costs them. And you may have more product lines. And you also have maybe more innovation than they will. So reusable learning describes ways to go into a problem and look for a unique solution. And it differs from reusable knowledge because that's often a way of doing things that is applied and replicated as a problem-solving tool. So it's basically solving a problem the same way each time versus looking at a problem uniquely and looking for a solution customized for that problem. Lean thinking requires repeated practice before any generalization can materialize. The process goes something like this. Point out the problems, acknowledge them, explore a lean technique to approach the issue, and experiment until a solution emerges. And we talked about some lean techniques already. There are different techniques that can be used. And there's some great examples in your text. It is the Clerico's example, the Clerico brothers. Yeah. Improving the flow of quality. That's the actual Clerico brothers. Fabiano and Furio Clerico. Investigate the customer's needs and wants and solve problems. So you have to, and obviously you need to know that as a baseline. You need to know what your customers want before you can really do anything that's going to, change your organization. And you don't want to make changes or cut costs so much that it interferes with the quality that the customers expect. That's an example of what I'm talking about. That would obviously not be desirable. So you have to consider innovation, efficiency, and all of that in the context of what the customer values. The reusable learning requires thinking of the customer as an individual rather than as a group. And how can we deliver value to that customer and streamline generic processes? So that's the thing you want to think of. Quality is still important over efficiency even. Because if you're not delivering something that a customer will want, then it doesn't matter about the rest of it. So we talked about the Clerical brothers example in the text a little bit, but we're going to get a little bit more involved with that. So customer Jimba visits. We probably haven't talked about Jimba much. You probably read about it already because in your text, but it's basically means in Japanese translation the actual or real place. And all this means is that in practice, the brothers would visit customers and see what was going on from their perspective. And then kind of identify problems there. Technical dojo training is basically focusing on the job one person at a time and what needed to be changed. Sometimes there might be, to see how the work really presented itself in action, they would have training for each technician and training plans. And basically looking for gaps there in training. Daily problem solving was basically just looking looking at customer value and then solving obstacles in their own processes. I guess a good example would be for that would, it could be very simple. What does a customer value? Probably fast shipping. Okay, so let's say there's a problem with that. So then you need to look into your own processes of the shipping and see where the gaps are and solve the problems from there. So that's just one small, pretty simple example of making the connection between solving problems in your own processes to that customer value. Ongoing team Kaizen, really that is just about keep on looking for ways to improve. Keep on looking for issues, problems that can be solved. It might be decreasing time, decreasing space, decreasing waste, anything. But you're continuously thinking in Kaizen terms. And then suggestion system, which is basically, creating an environment where employees feel emboldened to suggest ways of doing things that might be better or more efficient, and having an environment where they can actually put it into practice. So on page 174, there's an example. It's the FCI group, and there were some issues and the ways that they learned to do things that help them reduce the cost base. And one of the problems they were having was delivery. They're having issues with delivery, so they changed the way that they prepared the trucks that they use for shipping. And they built more quality because, well, let me go back to the delivery. The customer had brought up the concern that their shipments were unpredictable. So that was a service issue they had to tackle. The second problem that they heard about was a high rate of defects in the product. So what they had to do there is begin checking every part when there was a reason, when they felt like they needed to. So there was a 100% checking rate at all times would have been rather costly. So they began to have some conditions when they did check it and when they didn't check it. Now their approach was basically they had to visualize quality problems so that people on the lines could become aware of the problems they created. So in the final inspection of the production cell, there was always a on-the-spot analysis of every defective part. So what they had to end up having to do is teaching their employees when to check it and when not. So the point of that was to develop the employee's sense of responsibility for their work and investigate bad parts immediately when they occurred. And they would, whenever there was a defect, they would stop at the first defect and they would immediately handle it. And that's described in more detail in your text. So quality became a focus. I guess that's the main point of this, is that they were programming machines to also do that, to stop at a defect. A very interesting process that they use on page 183. Support local learning with Lean learning system. So how do you do that? There are many different strategies here. But what happens is that when you have a traditional mindset, changing into lean management, it's easy to interpret as it's a control process, but it's really not. It's kind of a new way of learning. It's what they're calling an education program, and so that's kind of the thing here, because it's really a process, and it is a strategy. They're like teaching you a new strategy to solve problems. It's really like just a different way of solving problems. I mean, it does have a lot of control processes put in place, but it's not just that. It's not just a way to control problems. It's really a whole different mindset of solving problems. It's more of a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach, which is what you get with traditional management. You know, you make a bunch of stuff and then you deal with the problems later. But in this case, you're trying to prevent issues from happening in the first place and prevent problems. And then when they do happen, you deal with them right away. And with this process, and this starts at local level and spreads to full company level, which makes sense because think about it. You start at where you're at. Every department's that's their local level. The floor, like a manufacturing floor, I'm making this widget. I'm going to deal with the problems. When I'm making this widget, I'm going to put it on, I'm going to begin my setup to make this widget. So that's where it even starts before it even goes on the line. So that's my local level. I have team members on this machine. I have a team member on that machine. I'm going to start making this widget. I got to make sure my machine works. Oops, there's a problem. I deal with my machine. Once that's dealt with, it goes on to the next machine and the next employee or whatever, and then on and on. So basically, but it spreads through the organization. Someone in order entry is getting an order. So how are they dealing, oh no, there's a problem with my order system. Well, my order system is very inefficient. Well, it takes a long time to put this order in. How can I make that better? So everyone's got their little processes, and they're doing lean in their own process, in their own departments, and it spreads all over to the whole company. Because everyone has some kind of duty that's involved in the overall goal to make a profit by making X product or whatever, Y product. Or maybe X, Y, and Z products, all of them. And in a lean environment, you might be making X product today and Y product tomorrow. So there's going to be transitions and issues there. How can we transition from this product to that product as quickly as possible? So you see there's just so many ways lean is happening all over your organization. It's just networks. Network of lean projects all the time. And basically it's just how you function. Once you start functioning that way, it just becomes how you operate every day. Conducting repeated experiments to grow the learning. where to look for results. Faster delivery increases sales. Reducing defects improves sales and lower costs. Reducing lead times improves use of labor and equipment. Frees up cash. So these are all the things that can happen. Oh, like as you've done these experiments, like as you've come up with possible solutions and you've done the experiments and you find the best methods, these are the results that should happen. Freeing capacity improves new introduction of new products. That should be increases. So these are all the results of implementing all this. Okay. And then obviously how to create conditions for Kaizen. Every defect, every problem, stop, analyze it. Improve workflow. Find ways to decrease bottlenecks. Make sure your machinery is maintained. If you're, creating a product, if it's in a manufacturing situation. Create a work standard everyone can reach for. Make sure that work standards are clear. I mean, if you create a process where let's see, think of a manufacturing line and you've got, I don't know, widget, whatever. And you've got station A, B, and C. There should be work standards for each station so that anyone can do exactly the same thing step by step and complete that part of the work in the same amount of time. Needs to be standardized. Realistic. Support team. You need to have someone there that help you through issues, problems, help you think through it, help as a mentor. And support stability of work conditions. Obviously, your work conditions need to be pretty stable. And it needs to be, basically when you're doing this, you want to standardize everything. If you are expecting to create this product in this amount of time with minimal waste or minimal inventory, then the steps and the whole flow needs to be pretty standardized. And the conditions of where you're working need to be stable, not, you need to be able to rely on those conditions. Because if you've got different environmental, conditions or problems coming in, it's going to create an obstacle. So you want to make sure everything's pretty stable. Okay, this is autonomy. This is a big not a problem, but a big important part of Lean. You need to challenge people to find problems and own solutions, encourage them to overcome obstacles. So again, it's kind of back to the suggestions. Make sure that you are giving your employees an environment where they are free to speak up about what they think, about how they feel about certain ways things are done, processes. Make sure that they're comfortable coming up with new ideas, implementing those ideas, and be able to support them and mentor them during that process. Make sure that they can understand how Lean works and the principles of Lean and the methods and tools and methodologies of Lean, and they can frame the problems that they find in that within that framework. and, encourage innovation, exploration, experimentation. So we're going to talk about setup reduction and burn. And we were talking about that last week as far as that's when we get started, we're going to decrease our setup time. And a lot of times companies that try to do this lean transformation just completely ignore this part. But it's important. Now you can see in this example that 2 teams are focused on setup reduction, and then but it does save time, and it does decrease lead time. So it's very important. Now in this, they did SMED training. I think some people call it SMED. I don't really like calling it that, but teach his own. It's basically was introduced during the Toyota production system, and is separate internal setup time from external. Separate internal setup time from external setup time. Sorry. So that is basically, you have teams. You have first setup. Whoa, and in your text you can see how messy it was. You have a second setup, and then you have a third setup. And what you try to do with the setup time is you try to eliminate distance, tools, placement of raw materials, and review labor for stations. You want to decrease travel time, obviously. That's one of the things. And if you look at the text, you can see how the first setup went. And there's a lot of back and forth. There's a whole lot of back and forth. So there's a way that you can arrange the materials that you need in a way to minimize that. And that will minimize your time. And that will minimize lead time. So it's interesting how you take things for granted. I'll give you, I'm cleaning my house, and I'm going upstairs, and then I'm coming back downstairs, and I'm going upstairs, and I'm then going in another room. And I know I could probably map this out of what I need to clean and make a much more efficient use of my time by doing that. And this is kind of the same situation. I mean, I'm just trying to give you something very simple, but it doesn't matter. And you can definitely save a lot of time by doing this. So as we move through the process, changes are made to reduce waste. Wasted time, perhaps wasted materials, depending on the setup and what you're doing. Wasted energy, wasted, we've got a lot of different things that we could be wasting here. It depends on what you're doing, but mostly for this, it's time. But in this case, you make the first setup. And after that first setup, all that walking that you've done is waste. And then after those steps, there's some changes that are made. then they started they studied the dyes that were used in the press for this setup, and they came up with, they noticed that there's not really any regular maintenance program for these, and some of them were out of service and needing repairs. So there's obviously some other issues going on, not just time wasted. So there needed to be changes there. And then this, the second evaluation was charted. Looks like the second setup went better. There was an improvement. And so after that, they did the third setup. And basically, they'll do this until the targets are met. So they have to come up with targets, baseline targets in the beginning. Sometimes it might be sometimes after that first one, it's so shocking how far away they are from where they think they should be. But, they kind of keep going until they meet some type of target that they want to make. And it becomes an ongoing project. So basically, it kind of never ends. There's always going to be some, okay, so we've got down to here, can we do better? Okay, we've got the time down to this far, can we do better? So it's really ongoing. You really never stop thinking that way. But these are like, that first setup is like shocking most of the time, because you're like, you can actually see how much waste, whether it be time or materials or whatever, how much waste there is. And that's really all for this week. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know. I'll be happy to assist you. And have a great week.